My education in video games did not prepare me. I would love to see how Miyamoto's views on simplicity in gaming would change with the knowledge of Chaturga. How Sakurai would incorporate Xelatoth into his next Smash roster. How Kojima would accommodate Ulioth into his ideas for a new horror game. Like my fellow YouTubers, I too had an interest in the history of video games. As a gamer, I believed that gems were hidden amongst the iconic titles of the past. It was with great excitement that I began my search. The gaming history was filled with colorful genres, everything from platforms and RPGs to horror survival games, each laying their own peculiar mark on the industry. I intended to uncover their secrets. What's up, gamers? Welcome back to another episode of Video Game Gems. I'm Ginge the Ripper. Let's play a game. Did you know Nintendo made a horror game on the GameCube called Eternal Darkness? I knew the game existed, it's been on my bucket list for a while, but I never knew the game was developed by Nintendo until I finally got around to playing it, and oh my goodness, it is one of the best dark games I've ever played. A young woman named Alex Roivas has been informed that her grandfather Edward was murdered with no explanation as to how or why. Edward was a nice man who mostly kept to himself. Hard to believe anyone would want him mutilated beyond recognition. Alex wants answers and refuses to leave her grandfather's estate until she uncovers the truth behind his death. While poking around the mansion, she discovers the existence of the Eternal Darkness, a story unfolding upwards of 2,000 years, and it goes a little something like this. Long ago, 3 gods inhabited the earth: Chaturga, the red god, Xelatoth, the green god, and Ulioth, the blue god, all in a never-ending war for world domination. However, none of them could do so successfully due to the rock-paper-scissors dynamic of their power. Red is strong against green, green is strong against blue, and blue is strong against red. With the 3 gods forever trapped in a balanced trifecta of power, life on Earth couldn't thrive, not until a 4th god came along and changed everything. Mantarok, the purple god, with the power of all 3 gods combined, sealed them away.
Wow, they really love using these colors, don't they? Look who's talking.
The only proof of their existence are the 3 artifacts they left behind. Who knows how much time had passed? Centuries? Millennia? Eons? Until the artifacts were first discovered by a man named Pius Augustus, who obtains one and the power of its respective god. As the artifact corrupts Pius, he begins preparing a ritual to free the god and plunge the world into eternal darkness. Now here's where things get interesting. You, the player, get to choose which of these gods to free and fight against. The one you choose will affect the gameplay and provide diverse information about the narrative. By defeating all 3 gods, you receive, among other things, the true ending, giving the game more replay value. Eternal Darkness is similar to a point-and-click adventure. You search around for items that help you solve small puzzles that allow you to progress, fighting enemies along the way.
Where's the key to the closet? Locked in the treehouse, but it can only be opened on Tuesdays at 11:46 p.m. Don't forget this. On second thought, I don't need what's in there.
You'll play as a variety of diverse characters throughout different time periods and various social backgrounds, all chosen by Mantarok to prepare against the Eternal Darkness. Each character is unique in their own way, making their stories interesting. Their efforts are all chronicled in a book created by Mantarok called the Tome of Eternal Darkness. Alex's grandfather has hidden the pages all over the manor to keep them safe from Pius. While playing as Alex, you search the house looking for chapter pages and use their information to prepare for Alex's chapter later in the game. When you find a chapter page, you'll play through it as its respective chosen one and learn about his or her fate. Each character has different stats that relate to their health, mana, and sanity bars. Some characters have more sanity than others, some characters have more mana than others, some characters have more health than others, and so on. I'm not going to explain what health and mana are. If you're still watching this video, you don't need an explanation. However, the sanity bar is a little more interesting. Every time you encounter an enemy, your sanity bar will decrease, and if the sanity bar is empty, your health will decrease instead. Sanity can be replenished by magic or by using a finishing move on an enemy. When a character is down to 1/3 of their sanity, they will start to hallucinate. From there, the less sanity they have, the more often they will hallucinate.
Wow, they really love using these colors, don't they? You're one to talk. This isn't really happening.
Hallucinations can be as simple as characters trapped in a room surrounded by enemies, or as nerve-wracking as your TV switching channels on its own, or bugs crawling on the screen. The dynamic of hallucinations are fun because they're made to freak out the player instead of your character. However, they're a little too redundant to be scary. During your first playthrough, you're most likely going to take things slow as you immerse yourself within the world and enthrall yourself with the narrative, perpetually keeping your health and sanity high because you don't know what's around the next corner. I only hallucinated once late game on my first playthrough, where the game tried to trick me into believing that my volume was turning down on its own. If I wasn't playing on a flat screen, this may have fooled me. On your second playthrough, you may find yourself avoiding the majority of enemies in several rooms as you'll never need to go back through them, or because the enemies are too slow and not worth your time. Running past enemies saves a lot of time and allows you to get through chapters faster. If this is the case, your sanity will most likely stay low for the majority of your playthrough. Therefore, you will always expect a hallucination to occur, and as such, the hallucinations lose their ability to scare you. These tricks may work on younger gamers, but not on their targeted demographic. It was a good first try though. Also, while insane, characters will hear Alex crying and occasionally getting attacked by monsters. Even Alex herself will hear the voice of another Alex, almost like there's another Alex in a different dimension or something.
What's wrong with you? I think I have tinnitus.
Each character has different characteristics that change up their gameplay. For example, the heavier characters like Max and Roberto are slower than the others. Contrastly, Michael, the firefighter, can run forever without getting tired. Also, Max is a wealthy individual who rarely sees combat. As such, his attacks are slower, whereas Alex and Kareem's attacks are quicker as they are nimbler.
I'm strong. I'm not. I'm a sadist. I can't swim.
Eternal Darkness does a fantastic job with its characters and stories. Play the game for yourself to experience them all. Characters have several different weapons at their disposal. Some carry melee weapons like swords and axes, some carry ranged weapons like guns and crossbows, and some carry a combination of the two. Characters can also cast magic, but more on that later. While holding R, you can aim at a specific body part on an enemy and chop it off. This is useful as taking off the arms of an enemy will render it unable to use physical attacks, and taking off the head allows the player to get close to an enemy without losing sanity. Not all weapons are created equal though. Depending on the character, you may find melee weapons more useful than projectiles, and vice versa.
Okay guys, grab a weapon from the mystery box. Alright, I'll try anything once. Alright, this'll work. I'm going to die!
Magic is the most unique feature in Eternal Darkness. You can cast several spells with 4 variations: red, green, blue, and purple in reference to their respective god. Before you can cast a spell, you need runes. Throughout the game you'll collect several runes that allow you to create new spells. There are 2 types of runes: yellow runes that decide which spell you are casting, and god runes that decide how the spell will affect the player. Die, all of you, purple Ginge. For example, the Absorb and Self runes craft the recovery spell. If the final rune is Chaturga, the player will recover health, Sanity if Zelatoth, and Mana if Ulioth. This is actually a funny little detail that Nintendo put into the game. You need mana to craft spells. If you use the blue recovery spell, you just gain back the mana you spent using the spell in the first place. It doesn't enhance or modify the player in any way. It was just added because it makes sense and follows the rules within the game. There's a 4th hidden Mantarok rune that can be obtained in Lindsay's chapter. Since Mantarok has the power of all 3 of the other gods, naturally you'd expect the purple recovery spell to fill all 3 bars: health, sanity, and magic. However, for game balancing purposes, the spell does not recover mana. If it did, you could just spam the recovery spell over and over again, making it overpowered. While it makes sense from a gameplay perspective, it breaks the rules of the game. As such, Eternal Darkness writes around this inconsistency at the beginning of the game. Mantarok is impaled with magical stakes that drain his power, slowly killing him. Because of this, some of his spells don't work the way they should.
I survived. Likewise. Me too, but I'm missing a leg.
When you find a rune, information about it will be unknown until you find its respective tablet that tells you its name and what it does. Spell scrolls are also scattered throughout the game that teach the player new spells. Spell scrolls will automatically craft spells for you and tell you what the spells do, so they're worth seeking out.
Hey, check it out, I found the DeviantArt scroll. Ooh, really? What does it do? Oh, why would you show me that?
Spell scrolls and rune tablets aren't necessary to collect. If you memorize certain spells and their respective runes, you can craft them after you've acquired the runes. The spells you craft this way will remain unknown until you find their respective spell scrolls. Crafting blindly also allows you to craft useful spells early on, instead of having to wait late game. Very useful for your second and third playthroughs. You start off with 3-point spells and upgrade later on to 5 and 7-point spells. Larger casting circles won't allow you to craft new spells, unfortunately, but they will allow you to upgrade your other spells by adding power runes to the extra slots. Once again, for a first-time game this is okay, but if a sequel were to come out, it would be nice to see more variety with larger casting circles. Also, it doesn't matter what order you put the runes in when crafting a spell, as long as you use the correct ones. Also, you can set the spells you use frequently to hotkeys so you don't have to keep on opening your menu to cast them. So how do the gods change up the gameplay? If you're on a Chaturga run, the majority of enemies will be red, green on a Zelatoth run, and blue on an Ulioth run. Physical attacks from enemies will always take away health, but magical attacks will affect the player differently based on the color of the enemy. Red will decrease your health, green will decrease your sanity, and blue will decrease your magic. Some enemies also act differently depending on their color. For example, green zombies act like normal zombies. They will revive themselves over and over unless the player performs a finishing move on them. Red zombies have the ability to grow their limbs back after they've been severed. And once a blue zombie has been attacked, it will call the other zombies in the room to join together and explode, doing massive damage to the player, oftentimes fatal, unless you chop off the head of the screaming zombie. Blue zombies are more dangerous because their magic attacks take away magic instead of health, once again, for balancing purposes. This makes an Ulioth run more challenging if you're unprepared. If there are different colored enemies in the same room, they will fight each other, the dominant color usually successful. While they're distracted, you can set up a big magic attack that does massive damage to both of them, or you can let them battle it out so you don't have to fight both at once.
Yeah, kick his butt!
Eternal Darkness is full of small, heartwarming details that enrich the experience. Here are a few of my favorites, the first of which is found at the end of Roberto's chapter.
You are the chosen. For many years I have tested those who came here, and all have failed. You are unaffected by the power I wield, and thus must surely be the chosen.
I?
Once I was as you were, confused and without answers, yet they came in time.
Roberto is a slave working against his will, away from his family and friends. He's a nobody in the eyes of society with no royal heritage. When he is revealed to be one of Mantarok's chosen, he is baffled in astonishment. Mid-game you acquire a summoning spell that allows you to summon a trapper. Trappers are blind scorpion enemies with great hearing. It's possible to sneak past them, but if you're too noisy, they will explode and send you to the trapper dimension, a place where the player can refill their health, mana, or sanity. It can be helpful if you need to top off, but after you've collected the recovery spell, it becomes insignificant and annoying. If you get caught, you'll want to escape as quickly as possible. There are two places where summoning a trapper is necessary to progress. You have to send two objects that are blocking your path to the trapper dimension, a corpse and a statue. If you're sent back to the trapper dimension after you've moved these objects, you'll find that they remain in the dimension for the remainder of the game. And finally, there are small, weak, black skeleton enemies that appear throughout the game. These enemies belong to Mantarok and were summoned to fight against the other enemies. Mantarok can't summon stronger enemies due to his confinement, and even though Mantarok allies with the Chosen, his skeletons will still attack you. This is because the skeletons were given orders to destroy all intruders that enter his tomb, or the resting ground of the artifacts. So, does Eternal Darkness have any downsides? Eternal Darkness is a game that prides itself on letting the player figure things out for themselves, as most point-and-click adventures do. But there were a couple places I was stumped on as they required a bit of overthinking to figure out. The first are the 5-point spells. You gain the ability to craft them in Paul's chapter. You're supposed to copy the barrier spell on the ground late chapter, and realize you enhanced the original 3-point spell with the power runes, and come to the conclusion that you need to enhance the dispel barrier spell the same way to progress. The second challenge that took me a while to figure out was the summoning trapper spell. In order to move an object, you have to lock onto the object with R before detonating the trapper. If you detonate a trapper near an object that you haven't locked onto, nothing will happen. You can only move 2 objects in the game other than enemies, so I don't see why this matters. The game doesn't give us much information about the gods or what they are gods of, despite the fact that each of them have a unique personality. Chaturga is a god that rules with an iron fist. Zelatoth is a god that went insane and has multiple personality disorder, and Ulioth is a god of the mind who believes he is above everyone else. I would also enjoy more information about the Roivas family. Alex's ancestors were immigrants when they first came to America, and over generations built up wealth and became upper-class citizens. From there, many Roivases were called out as witches, practitioners of magic, and a few were called insane and locked away. Max happened to be one of them. During Edward's chapter, he says,
As a psychiatrist, I believe that science could provide answers into my family's sordid, bizarre past.
He wanted to study the minds of his ancestors to understand his family's dark past, and learns that Max was an insane. One can only wonder what his other ancestors went through. Do any of these flaws keep Eternal Darkness from being a gem? Absolutely not. While I would love to learn more about some of the other characters in the game, Eternal Darkness doesn't leave out any important details. The game gives the player enough information to draw their own conclusions, and while some of the puzzles require a bit of overthinking, they're not unsolvable, so we can confidently say that Eternal Darkness is a gem. As always, before we go, here are some fun facts about the series. Eternal Darkness has several concept artworks for alternative endings that were never used. Each one appears to be a bad ending that the player may have received if they lost against Pius. Alex Roivas is one of many spirits players can obtain in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. She's a green primary spirit with 2 support slots that you obtain after defeating an upside-down Zero. Silicon Knights, the team behind Eternal Darkness, did in fact have plans for a sequel called Shadow of the Eternals on the Wii, that appears to take place between 2 alternating time periods, one taking place during the French Inquisition, an important time period of the first game. There are also several concept arts of this game, along with a trailer and gameplay footage I've linked in the description. Unfortunately, the game never came out due to Silicon Knights getting into legal trouble with Epic Games. Dennis Dyack, one of the producers of Eternal Darkness and writers for the sequel, is still interested in finishing the game, but due to a series of unfortunate events, has put the project on an indefinite hold. Hopefully one day we can see this game come to light, but for now, we can only wonder what could have been. I would have loved to unlock a Mantarok run after completing a run of each of the other gods, for one final challenge. This would mean that purple zombies would have all the attributes of the other colors, which means a purple zombie would screech, regrow its limbs, and also come back to life. It would also mean that every magic attack the player is struck with would take away health, mana, and sanity. Nintendo may have played around with this idea, but decided it was a little too difficult to add to the game, but who knows. Thank you all so much for watching, and keep on gaming!
This is either going to work or there's going to be a giant hole in my wall. Don't forget this. Hole.